Hi, I'm a straight geek,
And I'm a gay geek. And
and this is Being
being
Geeky's a
geeky is a
Drag.
drag. Alright. So if y'all don't know, because this is my channel, this is my brother Josh. Okay?
Hello,
Okay,
I'm Brother Josh.
I am Christmas Carol. And something you may not know about me is when I'm not listening to Judy Garland and Patti LuPone, I like to look at pop culture. And not just the stuff from the 1950s. So we're
Oh
gonna talk
no.
about some superhero movies today, Josh. Josh, what's the topic today?
Today is what is the most underrated superhero movie?
Mm. Josh, what do you think is the most underrated superhero movie?
I think that the most underrated superhero movie is The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker slash Spider-Man.
What's the Amazing Spider-Man about, Josh?
The Amazing Spider-Man is basically the story of Spider-Man. Peter Parker is a high school student who looks 30, but that's besides the point. He's a high school student who gets bitten by a genetically engineered spider and develops spider powers and becomes a superhero, fights a supervillain, in this case, the Lizard. And it's the Lizard, not the Green Goblin, so it is different than Tobey Maguire's first Spider-Man movie, and it's Gwen Stacy instead of Mary Jane Watson. So, and she's blonde, so different.
My movie is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Because it certainly gets a lot of positive attention, but I don't think it gets as much as it deserves.
All
Now,
right.
what is Guardians of the Galaxy 2 Volume 2 about, you may ask? Well, I'll tell
Hmm.
you. So you see, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 follows the adventures of Peter Quill, who is Star-Lord, and all of his friends, the raccoon, the tree, and the green lady, and then also the other uh, alien guy. And they all,
Hmm.
like, you know what? We hate each other, but we also are like each other because we're family.
Standard.
Yes. And then they go ahead and it's the story about how they fight Peter Quill's dad, who is actually kind of like basically a space god. The reason I chose Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is whenever I hear people talk about it, they're like, it's good, you know, but it's not as good as the first one, which seems downright insane to me. The first one was really good the first time I saw it, and then on rewatch, it was still good, but it didn't hold up quite as much. I think the second one is funnier. It has a way better villain. And I think the whole overall plot line is more cohesive. Like, it takes everything that was good about the first one and doubles down. That movie is basically all about trauma and
Hmm.
family, like trauma and how the way, we carry our trauma and the way we treat our loved ones, and um, which is like really deep for a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, which are mostly, I mean, I love them, but they're mostly punch, punch, you know, a lot of action, and I mean, for a lot, and there's certainly a lot of action in this movie, but it's definitely about something, and also,
Yeah.
spoiler alert, um, that movie that I think that's one of the few MCU movies other than like
Oh, like what one that made you like sad about a death?
yeah, like I did not care about Yondu before I saw that movie, and then I started
Yeah.
like it makes me cry, like it makes me bawl. It really touches me. It like talks about sisterhood and like parenthood and like all different types of family. I think it's really a real good movie.
Yeah. No, Yondu's death definitely gets to me. Um, and
Too much.
but I did feel more emotional at Yondu's death than I did at Iron Man's death, and that says something, I think.
I might have. I think that I might have gotten more emotional too. Well,
Yeah. And it's not even that I like Yondu as a character better than Iron Man. It was just like the way that it was done was like much more emotional.
I cry every time. I think it's because it's Yondu is someone who has had all of his friends and family, have let him down because he has carried his trauma with him throughout his life of being sold into slavery by the to the Kree. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that that movie has a lot of like more layers to it than people are just kind of like it's another silly, jokey Marvel movie. I think there's more.
Yeah.
I think it deserves a little more credit than that.
No, I definitely think it has more substance to it than the average Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Um, it has something to say in a way that a lot of them don't really. Um, some of them do, but
Yeah.
the Guardians movies on average, I think, have more thematic weight to them
Yeah.
than most MCU movies.
And
I think Guardians 2 is deeper than Guardians 1, but Guardians 1 is more entertaining to me. I liked Guardians 2 better on rewatch because like with all the reveals and everything in mind. Because when I was watching it the first time, like for most of it, they're just kind of hanging around the planet, hanging with Ego, and not really doing that much, you know.
yeah.
But it's better like knowing what's really going on, you know.
Yeah.
Because when I was watching it the first time, like part of me was like during all that was kind of like waiting for the movie to start in a way, you know.
Mm. See, I don't know. I really loved Guardians 1 the first time I saw it, and I still like it. It's still an upper tier Marvel movie, but like, it didn't hold up quite as well on repeat viewing. But the jokes in number 2 are still really funny to me. I think it's because
Yeah,
Drax is so funny.
Drax Drax gets a lot funnier in Guardians 2, and he carries that over
Yeah.
into Infinity War and Endgame because in the first Guardians he was kind of generic revenge dude, you know. But starting with Guardians 2, I think he might be my favorite Guardian.
I love Drax.
Yeah.
Now let's
Um,
talk about your movie because we've been
yes, I
talking
would
about my
like
movie.
to talk about my movie. I want to address some complaints about it. I mean, first of all, overall, I do prefer the Sam Raimi movies in general, but I don't think that um, the Andrew Garfield, the Mark Webb movies. Well, the second one is bad, but I think the first one is good enough that I don't think it's fair to dismiss them entirely.
I think The Amazing Spider-Man, I don't know. I think it's better than a lot of people say, but I don't know. I get why it gets the reaction it does.
I don't think it's amazing. So, but I do think that it is a good movie. The first one is. The second one that has a lot of issues.
It's horrible.
Yes, a lot of people when they're talking about like who is the best Spider-Man, you know, between Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland, they throw Andrew Garfield out pretty quickly,
Yeah. I
and I
think
don't think that's fair because I think he's actually a really good Spider-Man, and it is doing the origin again. They do their own spin on it, and I think that it works. Like it is different. He doesn't like learn the lesson about responsibility and all that like immediately after Uncle Ben dies, but he does learn it. It's just like a little bit more roundabout. So I do think that it gets the point across, you know. Whereas with Tom
yeah.
Holland's Spider-Man, they don't really go over that much at all.
Can I express something about that?
Yeah.
I have a point to bring up about that. I think you kind of need to do the whole. I know everyone's like, we've already seen it, but like, I think you
Yeah.
need to do it. Like, like I think Spider-Man: Homecoming, for example, kind of felt like it was missing a part of the character, and I think
Yeah.
Tony Stark's death kind of gave him a bit of that tragic
Hmm.
of his life.
Yeah. Like, or it just doesn't feel like Spider-Man to me, essentially.
Yeah.
And the more I think about it, about Tom Holland's Spider-Man, the less I like it, basically.
I and you were talking about Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I like Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I don't think he works as well as Peter Parker. I don't think I blame that on Andrew Garfield. I think it was
Yeah.
the way it was written.
Yeah, no, like they have him like skateboarding through the hallways and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and it's like, and he, a lot of people say that he's too cool, and he's definitely cooler than Tobey
Yeah.
Maguire's Peter Parker, but he still is like a
Awkward.
socially awkward loner. So I think that gets a little bit exaggerated, you know?
He's not like a cool kid. Like,
No,
he feels like, I mean, he feels kind of like stoner Peter Parker. like, um,
he's yeah. I mean, it's fair to call him hipster Peter Parker, but you know,
yeah.
it's still he still comes off as like a misfit, you know.
I used to have such a crush on Andrew Garfield, Josh, in that movie. Like, he was
Everyone did.
you know, and then Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was really like sarcastic, and they felt more like Spider-Man.
Yeah. Another thing about Andrew Garfield, because in sad moments, like when he has to cry, he sells the hell out of that, you know?
He does do really good at it, yeah.
Yeah. And whenever he has to be angry and everything. And, you know, some people have criticized Andrew Garfield's Peter for being kind of a dick. But on but like if you reread the origin story from the comics, you know, the whole arc is that, you know, the powers start going to his head basically, which leads to him, you know,
Yeah.
letting a criminal go because, you know, not my problem, whatever. And then he gets like pulled crashing back to reality basically, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Spider-Man kind of was a jerk at first. Like, he's a teenager.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
And you kind of need, I don't mind having the main character be a little bit of a jerk sometimes, you know? I mean, it depends on how you handle it, you know? I think the most important thing is that you acknowledge that the character is being kind of a jerk, you know? And they
I
do
mean,
in this case, and he does learn his lesson, you know?
and that's actually bringing it back to Guardians. They do the same thing.
Mhm.
Everyone in that movie is a jerk. They've all been affected by their past, and that's lead them to make like bad decisions. Well, these people are quite clearly meant to be like flawed and make mistakes. I mean, I don't think Spider-Man's not Superman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know.
And like that's a big part of why I like Spider-Man better than Superman
Um,
because
yeah.
you know because he's more relatable that way, and
And there's certainly
he's a very good person, but you
yeah.
know it doesn't mean that he's perfect. He does make
Yeah.
mistakes, you know.
Like I think Amazing Spider-Man is always like the second to last on the lists, and I don't think that's necessarily fair.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Guardians is always in the middle, and I think it should be higher. They always put movies like I don't know, like it's always like a lot of the times it's near the end because people are like it's too jokey, and I'm like that is a problem with Marvel in general. Okay.
If they think it's too jokey, then like people are always putting Thor Ragnarok near the top. That doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Like, and that, I mean, and I still really like that movie, but that didn't necessarily make the most sense, like, for the
Hmm.
characters, but, like, it was still entertaining, so I didn't care, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, oh, they cut these and I think there is, like, a bit, I see what people are saying, and that they cut serious moments with comedy, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of like really dark moments, and then like for example, when like Mantis is like thing with the rest of them, and it's all super badass, and then she gets hit with like a bucket and like passes out, and then like 2 seconds later, Drax is like, Mantis, look out! Uh, like that.
Yeah.
So it's a like, and it's like that's the type of superhero movie I think I would show to someone who doesn't like superhero movies.
Hmm.
Because it's good as a movie.
That reminds me of another complaint that I've heard about Amazing Spider-Man, which is that it's too dark and too serious. Which it's definitely more serious than like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, and that is one reason why I like those better because I do enjoy that quirky tone where and how in those movies like every minor character has like a ton of personality. You know what I mean? And I do like that, but at the same time, like it's not like it's not like Zack Snyder dark.
I
You know what I
know,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah, and it
and
does
yeah,
and it does have a sense of humor to it. You know, it's not like this is
Yes.
Spider-Man. This is serious business. It's
Yeah.
more like that than Sam Raimi movies, but it's not ridiculously so.
And I mean, we just had 3 movies of that style.
Yeah, exactly. So they so
Necessarily,
they couldn't
yeah.
just imitate that, especially if they're doing the origin again.
I think the characters are all still really like Sally Field as Aunt May. It was kind of.
Yeah, she's great.
Um, I'm a little disappointed we didn't get to see MJ in that universe.
Apparently,
She
they
was supposed
cast
to be.
Shailene Woodley.
Yeah, they filmed scenes and everything.
Yeah, but they cut it.
Yeah. I'm kind of disappointed that they tried to all start this like cinematic universe with number 2. Like it had a lot
Yeah.
of potential. They just.
Yeah, and that's another other thing about like them like redoing the origin again. Like yes, we have seen the origin before, but they do it differently, and I think it's a good like it had the potential to be a really great franchise going forward, and unfortunately, the second one killed it.
And I do think you need to address the origin. I don't think you
Yeah,
necessarily need to like go through it, but it's like
at
when
least, at least yeah, just mention what happened, basically.
yeah, it's like when people are like, "Oh, you keep showing Batman's parents being killed," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you're not showing the whole that's
Mhm.
the most important thing about his character." you know,
Yeah,
like
I mean,
Spider, you know,
here's the fact. So, my girlfriend had only seen the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies.
yeah.
So I introduced her to the other ones. She didn't even know who Uncle Ben was until I showed her those.
I know.
Yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man had a lot of potential. The love story is really solid.
Hmm.
I was gonna say Gwen Stacy. I really love Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. Again,
Yeah.
I really like Emma Stone as an actress, and that movie is a big reason. That and Easy A, she's just very likable. Um,
Yeah.
and she's also talented. She's very talented.
Yeah.
In other movies, but she, I like how that character is like just as smart as Peter. Not
Hmm.
smart, but she keeps up with him. But she's
Yeah.
just like I'm smart and pretty, and oh my, she has her own personality, and
Yeah.
it's
And a
done.
lot of that probably has to do with the fact that they did date in real life. So they really do feel like a couple. I want to talk about the lizard for a sec.
Yeah,
So that's another criticism I want to address is that that the lizard is kind of repetitive basically as a villain because he's another scientist who experiments on himself and develops a split personality and he turns evil and all that. Um, which had been done in the Sam Raimi movies with the Green Goblin and Doctor Octopus. Um, but the thing is, like in the comics, that's more the Lizard's thing than it is with the Green Goblin and Doctor Octopus.
yeah.
Like, like he's a really like Kurt Connors is like just this really likable guy, and you spend a lot of time with him as himself.
Hmm.
And he has a family and stuff. With Doctor Octopus, like if you read the first issue, he's
Evil.
just kind of this antisocial scientist, and then like boom, and it gets fused, and they mention that it affected his brain, and he's evil now. But that's really it. It doesn't really go that like everything else with him is basically just focusing on him like
Mhm.
as a bad guy. It doesn't really go into the tragedy of how he was this good man, or even or like what he was before, or anything like that. And I think that they probably should have gone with another villain than the lizard. Um,
But also, a lot of the Spider-Man villains are like that. Like most of
yeah, there's a lot of like experiments gone wrong, experiments like changing people's personalities and stuff. I think that the lizard he he does still fit that template, especially when they have him like hearing voices and stuff.
yeah.
So I think that they should have gone with a different villain than the lizard, just because that had been done twice already.
Hmm.
Um, but I think, but like if you're talking about it being repetitive in that way, I mean that's the lizard. I don't know what to tell you. And in some ways they kind of stole from the lizard in their
Yeah.
versions of the Green Goblin and Doctor Octopus in the Tobey Maguire movies.
Speaking of, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 has a really great villain.
Yes.
Um, Ego, I mean, like, it's just like, it's basically all of the Guardians, it represents, like, all of them wish for a family that they don't really have. Like, and he
Mm-hmm.
represents this ideal. Like, he's Peter's father. He's perfect. He's a god. And then they're like, nope. Like he's not like he's messed up. He's just as messed up as Peter. Like, you really like kind of get it. And I
There's
think
gonna be a lot of Peter in this.
yeah. There's just a lot of Peters. He works
Mm.
for the movie. He just works really well for the movie. I think he's like really solid. Yeah, much better than Ronan. Um,
Yeah.
'Cause even if you like the first one better, Ronan is a crappy villain.
Yeah.
He's just kind of there and blue.
Mm.
Whereas Ego like has a lot to do with the plot and a lot to do with the themes. Yeah, Guardians 2 is solid. It's actually my favorite MCU movie. This is like you like yours. This is me. It's my favorite.
Mm.
And also, a lot of people who don't like Marvel movies like that movie and the first Guardians. And
Yeah.
that says a
Well,
lot.
the Guardians like as a franchise is probably my favorite like
Yeah.
mini franchise within the MCU.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to go back to the dark thing for a sec. Um, People say it's too dark and everything. I mean, Spider-Man on the whole tends to be more lighthearted than say Batman, but it can get very dark. Gwen Stacy was murdered by the Green Goblin in the comics.
I
I
think
mean,
it's dark for Marvel, actually.
Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, it's not as dark as like Daredevil or something, but it's there. I mean, it's all based around Uncle Ben stuff, and Peter Parker's life is always miserable. It's like it's
That's
very
not,
angsty.
yeah. I don't think Spider-Man was that dark. I think honestly, the style,
No, it's not. It's
it's just
mostly
the
just because
style
it,
and the
it
way
takes
it's
place at
shot.
night a lot of the time when he's
Yeah,
Spider-Man,
that's it.
which makes sense because he's in high school.
yeah, like that one feels the most realistic, but like,
Yeah.
like the style and
It's one of those things where people like conflate dark and realistic a lot.
yeah. Like, the style of it is darker, like the clothes are darker and everything, but the movie's
Yeah.
not like that dark. It's not like a
It's more serious, it's more realistic, but that's not saying that much compared to the Sam Raimi
well,
movies. So The Amazing Spider-Man is the one that everyone when they talk about who's the best Spider-Man, they'll like mention Andrew Garfield briefly and then just like throw him away and talk about Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland and kind of dismiss the Amazing Spider-Man movies altogether. And I don't think that's fair to do because I think that even in the second one, I think there's some good stuff in there. Um, and as for Guardians of the Galaxy, like you said, a lot of people who don't even like superhero movies like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. They're like one one of the most popular, sub brands within the MCU.
see,
I mean,
if I was
Spider-Man is popular too, obviously. It's like the Marvel superhero, but that one specifically tends to get thrown to the side. Because like Tom Holland's Spider-Man is the new and shiny thing. Same with Into the Spider-Verse really, and the Tobey Maguire movies people are nostalgic for, and so the Andrew Garfield ones everyone kind of forgets about, and I don't think
yeah.
that they should be forgotten. I think that they stand on their own.
See, I think I could say that like Amazing Spider-Man is regarded less than Guardians 2, but I also think Guardians 2 is a lot better movie. So that's my only argument, like, is that I think Guardians 2 is, people like Guardians 2. You know,
Yeah.
Like, and I think maybe for audience appreciation, I think a lot of people really like that movie. But when it
Mm.
comes to like, the critics and like the people online and like every single list, Guardians 2 is way low. It should be like it should be one of the top ones, like with like the first Iron Man and Winter Soldier and like Guardians 1,
Mm. I mean,
It's solid. It's really solid. The characters are good. It has something to say. People say superhero movies don't have substance. That one definitely has substance. Um,
yeah. Yeah, I think it does have substance. Honestly, the first time I watched it, I was a little bored, you know, because of the things I said
yeah.
before
I can't
about like,
relate to that, but
well, it's just the thing I said before of like I was just getting kind of antsy. Is like, okay, what's going on? When's the movie gonna start? Um, where's the conflict basically? And I think, and they take their sweet time arriving at that conflict, you know.
they don't
And I
actually
think,
take as long as you think.
okay, but
Got
it
running
feels long, which
time.
I think says something.
Um, I mean, I do know there is a lot of sitting and talking, but I think it's really good sitting and talking, so I didn't really mind.
I'm not against sitting and talking. It's just, you know, in a movie like a superhero movie, especially, it's like okay, you got 2 hours. Okay, what's the plot? You know,
I
and
mean,
they
I think it took a while to get to the plot in the first Amazing Spider-Man as well.
mm, I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's like the first half of it is the origin, but it's the same thing with the first Tom Maguire one. It's the first hour is the origin, and like the Green Goblin doesn't really like he shows up for a sec, but he doesn't really make his big entrance until the second hour of the movie.
Yeah, but he's always like I don't know. He's always a presence. I don't know.
Not as much as you think rewatching it. Like they show him like for like a few seconds, like every so often, just to remind you that he's there, basically.
I
But he
mean,
doesn't really go into action until the second hour. The first hour is entirely devoted to the origin story.
I think that does kind of say something though.
What do you think it says?
Well, that the Green Goblin is so much more memorable than the Lizard.
No, he definitely is.
And the Lizard was my favorite when I was a kid.
Really, I didn't remember that.
I liked the Lizard a lot. But I,
What is it about the lizard that you liked so much?
I don't know. I think I just thought he was cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
um, you know, but then I mean, as
Was
a
that during your Jurassic Park phase?
maybe it was probably around that time. I think I just wanted to see him on film because I thought it would look cool, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And I liked Electro a lot too. And then
I mean, the lizard definitely looks better than the Green Goblin does.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know. He's just like so like I don't know.
He's kind of generic.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, like he wouldn't be so generic with the whole Jekyll and Hyde thing if it weren't for the fact that they'd already done that twice in Spider-Man movies.
yeah. It's a good, you know, Amazing Spider-Man is good, but it's not great.
Yeah.
And I think Guardians 2, I think it's great. I really do. Um,
Hmm.
and I see what you're saying. Like, there is a lot of, people just kind of sitting and making jokes and stuff. But
Hmm.
I think,
They're good jokes. I'm not saying they're not.
yeah, I don't know. I think I liked the characters enough that I didn't care. But like the climax is like 30 minutes long. Like, it's a 30
Yeah.
action
Well, that's
scene.
pretty standard for a climax, especially for a superhero movie.
Yeah. Um, and then there's like the golden people playing video game. Like, there's so many like
Yeah.
moments in that movie. Also, Groot, like is great, but
Baby Groot. And now it's Baby Yoda.
yeah.
I just want to say to everyone that I occasionally dress up as Spider-Man for birthday parties, and I'm amazing. So I am the real Amazing Spider-Man. Take that, Andrew Garfield.
And I'm a guardian of the galaxy.
And this has been
Being
Being Geeky's
geeky's
a
a
Drag.
drag.